If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. This is the Thank Generational Wealth podcast with your host, Amir Estimo. Private Victory. I know I talk about this book a lot, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And actually, we're going to cover these next few podcasts. We'll be just talking about these 7 habits and incorporate it into thinking generational wealth. So when we think about generational wealth, habit 1, be proactive. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. And habit 3, put first things first. Habit 1, be proactive, principles of personal vision. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind, principles of personal leadership. Habit 3, principles of personal management. So when you think about these 3 habits in the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, be proactive. So when it comes to generational wealth, how active are you? What are you doing to build generational wealth? What am I doing? That's a question too I have to ask myself. What am I doing to build generational wealth? Now, being proactive it could mean anything to anyone. I mean, to me, being proactive, being about generational wealth could be acquiring assets. To you, it could be mindset. So it's all subjective to the person. But at the end of the day, being proactive about generational wealth is very, very, I think it's very important because it puts you in position to constantly think. When you go to that Starbucks every single day and spend $5, $6 on a cup of coffee, you may not think twice about that. You may not think twice because think about it. Let's say you go every day, 30 days in a month on the average, that's $150. $150 that could be allocated towards something else, whether it's building your children's legacy, building a legacy for you and leaving it for your children. Or if you don't have children, it doesn't have to be about children. Or just in general, building a legacy and leaving it. So being proactive, I mean, you look at a high net worth, the high achievers, what are they constantly doing? They're constantly being proactive. They're constantly solving problems. They're constantly building skill sets. They're constantly investing in themselves because they know you only have so much time on this planet, on this earth, before your expiration date happens. So you got to constantly be proactive when it comes to generational wealth. When it comes to just even in business, personal life, I mean, even when you think about health-wise, if you're not constantly actively in the gym, like for me, for example, I haven't been in the gym over a month and a half. I have a small tear in my shoulder that I've been dealing with, but that's still no excuse because I go to a chiropractor and he says, you should still be going to the gym. So you think about it, that's me not being proactive. So that's something now I have to incorporate and say, you know what? I got to make that part of my journey. I have to make that part of who I become. Because, talking about habits, because I truly believe habits have a lot to do with your mindset, and it has a lot to do with where you go in life. So if you're not constantly being proactive, and whether it's improving yourself, whether it's improving your health, whether it's improving your relationships that are around you, something is going to fall through the crack. You got to get used to being uncomfortable being comfortable, or however they say that. You got to get used to being uncomfortable. You can't constantly be comfortable. I remember 7 years ago, I moved from Florida and moved to Texas. I had to become uncomfortable because me and my family, we didn't know anybody here, but we've managed to go out and meet people, and now we truly love living in Texas. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. What is your end goal when it comes to generational wealth, building or thinking generational wealth? What's the end? Begin with the end in mind. You have to think about the end goal. It's just like going back to health and losing weight, going to the gym. Because at the end of the day, for me, I may need to weigh a certain weight. But if I'm not being proactive and I'm not thinking with the end in mind, when I start a business, I'm not thinking about what's my end goal. I would like to build businesses that are turnkey. Build a business, build it up, get it stabilized, and sell it. Or I could think about, build this business and leave it as a legacy for the next generation. But my end goal is I have to think with the end in mind. So I begin with that, and then I try to incorporate these habits into my life. So, you're going to hear me talk a lot about these next few podcasts because I truly making this a habit. There's that word of studying about habits, because I think habits play an important role in your development as a human being, whether it's good or bad. Then the third is put first things first. Okay, if you have kids, you might want to put your kids. Not to say you shouldn't go splurge or do anything you want, because at the end of the day, you work hard for your money, you work hard for what you do, and you deserve the right to spend money on you. But I could think about even for me, let's say having, 2 car payments, or go buy that luxury car that's probably not really needed, where you could have probably downsized and got something less, and still probably paid $20,000, $30,000 more. Again, if you got it, do it. But I'm talking to the people who don't got it and still do it. That's the funny thing. Because at the end of the day, if you lose your job, you know what happens? You're responsible. You're still in the note to pay those car note. They're not going to care that you don't have a job. They're still going to want their money every single month. But how much money are you spending on a car? Because by the time we're talking about generational wealth, and let's talk about a car. A car is a liability. It's not an asset. Because let's say you have car payment $250, you're putting $100 a month, $100 a month, $150 depending on where you are located in Texas. Everything is so spread out here, so you're gonna do some driving in Texas. So we talk about what, $250, $100, that's $350. Let's say $150, $400, and we're not even talking about car insurance. Now we can have a debate later on, or I can cover a topic on my opinion on leasing a car versus owning a car, but that's a subject for another day. But you're thinking about this car, and let's say you buy this car, you're on hook for $400, and we're not even including insurance. We're not even including if the car breaks down, what you're responsible for. So you're probably going to be to about $500-$600 a month. That's $500-$600 a month. Let's say half of that could have been put towards building generational wealth, could have been put towards maybe investing into real estate, or, the hottest things down these days is forex trading. That's a skill set. If you're really good with that skill, you can make pretty good money. Investing in stocks, that's up to you. Maybe invest into a tax savings life insurance plan like the IUL. If you don't have an insurance, life insurance especially, maybe buying life insurance for your family, protection. These are all things that we don't think of because we invest so much into liabilities. We got to have the nicest cars, live in the nicest houses. Now, a house, again, that's another subject for another day. But Robert Kiyosaki believes a house is a liability, and to some degree, he's right. He is right, because when you really think about it, a house, once you buy a house, it's all on you. That was the I wouldn't say the toughest transition, because I remember I was renting for a while, and once we transitioned, but the owner, he pretty much was like, you're in charge of everything that breaks down here. And when we transitioned to owning a home, it's now your mortgage goes up because it's yours. It's just like the leasing versus owning a car argument. Everybody has their say so, but I believe it's what applies for you, what works for you. So these are things that, when it comes to generational wealth, these are things that are thought about. These 3 principles: be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first. So as I look on into the next podcast, like I said, these next podcast episodes are going to be so much more about habits. We're going to talk about habits, because I want to be able to share what I'm learning and putting into action. And I want someone, it doesn't have to, even if it's one person, go out there and say, you know what, he's probably right. I don't have all the answers. I'm learning just like you are, but I am making it a habit. I'm making a mission for myself, a personal mission, that when I leave this earth, I'm not leaving it with debt for my kids, or I am leaving it so they can continue to move on and continue that mindset that I'm helping them develop to the next generation, because I didn't get that opportunity. So hit me up. Think Generational Wealth. We're on Instagram, Think Gen Wealth, at Think Gen Wealth. We're on a Facebook group, Think Generational Wealth. We have our email, thinkgenwealth@gmail.com. Also, please go on Apple and subscribe. Go on Apple and subscribe to our latest podcast, and just subscribe. Leave reviews. Let us know, because I want to know. I want to know if it's something you want to hear talk about. Is this someone? We're not at that point yet to interview people, but I want to be able to document this journey as we move on. But if there's something you want to hear, you want to talk about, feel free. If you're an expert at a subject when it comes to generational wealth, hit me up at Gmail, thinkgenwealth@gmail.com, and we would love to hear. We would love to get you in the pod just so you can share value to the people. So until next time, folks, what people should be thinking: generational wealth.